look at some of the big trends in misinformation with Media Monitoring Africa, and their spokesperson, their communications manager, Nomshado Lubisi, joins us now. Nomshado, good afternoon to you. I mean, we saw last week this deepfake video. It's Peter de Villiers, former rugby coach. He's a candidate, I think, in the Drakenstein municipality. How now the IEC is running a system to stop fake adverts. How does this all work?
So, I mean, I feel like last week taught us, that whatever we see on social media, we really cannot believe it at first sight, especially looking at that deepfake video where it was quite convincing. And a lot of people were convinced that this was really him saying all those words, whereas it was actually manipulated images that were used to create fictional images. And as I said last week, that usually these are spotted by the lip syncing or the skin patching and how that technology worked to create that new narrative. However, just also speaking to last week's complaint, how that works is that Real Phone 1 still remains the same. We just integrated with IEC oversight. So we are still receiving normal complaints that are not elections related. However, if we do see elections related complaint, it still goes through the Real Phone 1 process through the experts and reviewers. However, the final outcome of that complaint then goes to the IEC. So it sits with the IEC for the last staging of relaying the outcome of the complaint. So that's what we saw happening last week, where it was constituted as disinformation. However, in terms of any further action, that decision-making lies with the IEC.
This deep-fake stuff is frightening. I mean, basically, they can make a video of someone saying something they absolutely didn't say. I mean, someone could claim that I support Kaiser Chiefs and that I said that, for example. I mean, this is really frightening stuff for a democracy.
I think you get to also see, the power of AI as well, because this was more of a global trend that we saw in, global elections. However, we rarely saw it in South Africa. And now that, we're getting to see what a deepfake actually looks like, it kind of shows you the power of deepfake technology and what it can do. So that's why it's very important, at the same time, it might be the person's voice or the person's image, but there's always those technicalities that you can spot that makes you double check or pause a bit before resharing it.
And I mean, I suppose one of the problems is if you're used to someone's voice or you're used to someone's image, even if you're told later that they didn't say what they said, it's actually quite hard to get that idea out of your head that they said it, especially if it's the kind of thing they might say.
Exactly. I think, I mean, even if it's not the kind of thing they would usually say, but the minute you just hear somebody's voice, it's that comfort of this is actually the person speaking. And once disinformation goes out, it's really tough to stop it, because as much as the source might have removed that content, it's still being reshared on different platforms. And just to get that to stop requires a whole effort, yeah.
There's been a ton of fake news, of course, around COVID-19, misinformation and disinformation about vaccines. YouTube is now getting a little bit more active about this. I mean, there have been some claims about COVID and breathing, for example. I mean, YouTube's now going to start taking this stuff off.
Well, what we've seen is that, the big tech companies have been really put, on the table in terms of accountability and what are they doing about all these disinformation narratives that we're seeing online. And what we recently saw from last year was YouTube has now started banning, channels that are proactively spreading disinformation and misinformation about COVID or about the vaccines themselves. And what you've seen there happening as well is obviously the minute it gets taken down, they get angry and go to other different platforms where they further distribute that content.
And then the other example you have this week is around special voting. So the Electoral Commission has special voting open, I think only for a couple more hours. You do it on the website, but it's not the way to jump the queue.
No. So I think last week we started seeing, the whole ideology of you get to skip the line, you get to, do it first. Whereas I think the education around what special voting actually is and who it basically accommodates and how do you qualify for this. So it's not just any general citizen that can obviously go and apply for this. So I think the wording around those ads are quite critical and important to ensure that we're getting the right people and making them aware that they can actually go ahead onto the IEC platform and obviously apply for that.
Are you seeing a lot more? I mean, it's such a strange season at the moment, but I imagine there's a lot more sort of misinformation around at the moment than we would normally have, and that's primarily because you have an election, so, I mean, it's politicians talking, you should always be cynical, and then the pandemic as well. Those two things together.
I think it also almost becomes like an information overload. I mean, we're still in the middle of COVID, and there's a lot of information going on around there. And we're also in the middle of an election period where we've got a lot of parties obviously now formulating their messaging and their digital posters and campaigning. And that has been going on full force, and especially now that we're almost in the middle of it. And even with that, just to shine light on that, I mean, even the simple digital posters that you see online, you know, that could also be manipulated. And what we've been seeing is that, you know, some people take the let's just say party A digital poster and manipulate it a bit as a part of, you know, parody or satire, and that gets shared, and people obviously don't know actually that's not originally from the party. So we've been kind of seeing that type of content, you know, going around as well.
Nomshado Lubisi, thanks very much indeed, a communications manager at Media Monitoring Africa. Everything she just said is absolutely the truth. I do appreciate the time.